This is my Odyssey, visiting the birthplaces of the U.S. presidents with pictures and fun facts. I'm Bob Henderson. The 14th president of the United States was Franklin Pierce, the only president born in New Hampshire. Pierce was born in Hillsborough, New Hampshire, at what is today 301 2nd New Hampshire Turnpike. He was a one-term president, 1853 to 1857, and his statue stands in front of the New Hampshire Capitol in Concord, New Hampshire, not far from his birthplace. Fun fact, a future First Lady would be related to the Pierce family, but more on that later. The 15th president was James Buchanan, Jr. He was president from 1857 to 61, and he's the first of two presidents born in Pennsylvania. He was born in southeast Pennsylvania, nestled in the Allegheny Mountains in a place called Cove Gap, Pennsylvania. Stony Batter on the sign refers to the Buchanan home site in Ireland. After all, batter means road in Gaelic. The birthplace is now a part of Buchanan State Park. Buchanan was the only bachelor to become president, lived most of his life in nearby Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is now the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country. His estate there was called Wheatland, and he's buried near there. The 16th president, considered one of the greats, Abraham Lincoln, president from 1861 to 65, first member of the newly created Republican Party to become president. And Lincoln's the only president born in Kentucky. He was born in Hodgenville, Kentucky, at a farm called Sinking Spring. The family soon after lost the farm and moved to the nearby Knob Creek farm. And in his memoirs, Lincoln says, quote, "My earliest recollection is of the Knob Creek place," end of quote. The National Historic Site is just outside of Hodgenville. Lincoln would move on to Indiana and later Illinois, where he practiced law and served in elected office at the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois. Incidentally, a future president would launch his campaign for the presidency from this same old state capitol. Lincoln's statue stands both outside and inside the current Capitol building in Springfield, and his home in Springfield, the beautiful home, is still very much visited today by tourists. Lincoln would become the first president to be assassinated, dying of the assassin's bullet just a month after he was inaugurated for a second term, and that was in April of 1865. The 17th president, Andrew Johnson, served out the remainder of Lincoln's term, 1865 to 69. Johnson was the third of three presidents born in North Carolina. He was born at 123 Fayetteville Street in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, just a quarter mile from the state capitol, where his statue stands in front of the Capitol alongside the other two presidents born in North Carolina. Andrew Johnson was Lincoln's second vice president, by the way, and assumed the presidency when Lincoln was assassinated. Like Lincoln, Andrew Johnson was not formally educated, and like Lincoln, he was born in poverty. Andrew Johnson became the first of three presidents to be impeached. He survived by just a single vote in the Senate. And fun fact, that deciding vote was cast by Senator Edmund Ross of Kansas, who incidentally was born in my hometown of Ashland, Ohio. The 18th president was Ulysses Simpson Grant, two terms, 1869 to 77. Grant was the first president, the first of seven, born in Ohio. He was born Hiram Ulysses Grant, but a mistake on his application to West Point made him known as Ulysses Simpson Grant. He was born at what is today 1551 State Route 232 in Point Pleasant, Ohio. It's right on the Ohio River, separating Ohio from Kentucky. Now, it's just east of downtown Cincinnati, by the way. Grant was one of three generals that became president to hold the highest military rank. The other two, by the way, were Washington and Eisenhower. Grant, of course, led the Union Army to victory in the Civil War of the 1860s. Fun fact, Grant ran his first campaign for president in 1868 from Galena, Illinois. And I'm telling you, if you're ever in Northwest Illinois, you have to stop and see Galena, a wonderful slice of Americana. And the answer to the question, who's buried in Grant's tomb, is Ulysses S. Grant and his wife, buried in Upper Manhattan. The 19th president of the United States was Rutherford Burchard Hayes, one term, 1877 to 81. Hayes was the second of 7 presidents born in Ohio. He was born at 17 East William Street in downtown Delaware, Ohio. The house where he was born was torn down about 100 years ago, and there's a gas station on the site today. Although in downtown Delaware, there's a statue of Hayes and several markers. Delaware is a small town about a half an hour north of the state capital of Columbus, Ohio. Fun fact, Hayes won a bitter contest for president in 1876, although he did not win the popular vote, and he didn't get a majority of electoral votes. Neither candidate did. So Hayes then got the needed electoral votes, but in return for ending Reconstruction in the South after the Civil War. The 20th president was James Abram Garfield, the third of 7 presidents born in Ohio. Garfield was born in poverty in what is now Moreland Hills, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland. The cabin where he was born sits behind what's today the town hall in Moreland Hills. Garfield was only president for 6 months in 1881, as he was shot to death at the train station in Washington, D.C. by a disappointed office seeker by the name of Charles Guiteau, and thus Garfield became the second president in U.S. history to be assassinated. The 21st president was Chester Alan Arthur. He was Garfield's vice president, served out the remainder of the term, 1881 to 85. Now, Chester Arthur made his mark in New York state politics, but he's the first of 2 presidents born in Vermont. He was born in tiny Fairfield, Vermont. As I made my way to the birthplace, I started seeing signs for Montreal, Canada. I knew I was getting pretty far north. This is one of those birthplaces where you'd never go unless you were specifically looking for it. East of St. Albans, Vermont, take Vermont 36 to what is today 4588 Chester Arthur Road. Even residents in a nearby town that I talked to have never been to this site. The 22nd president was also the 24th president. He's the only president to serve non-consecutive terms. Stephen Grover Cleveland, known as Grover Cleveland, president the first term, 1885 to 1889, and the second time, 1893 to 97. Grover Cleveland is the only president born in New Jersey. He was born at 207 Bloomfield Avenue in Caldwell, New Jersey, about a dozen miles from Newark, New Jersey. Many people think that perhaps Grover Cleveland was born in New York State. After all, he was the mayor of Buffalo, he was the governor of New York, but he's an example of many of the presidents who were born in one state yet lived most of their lives in another. He would lose his re-election bid to the man who would become the 23rd president, although Cleveland won the popular vote. And this would set the stage for a comeback in 4 years. Fun fact, Grover Cleveland is on the $1,000 bill. There's a great trivia question. The bill's no longer in circulation. My visits to the birthplaces of the U.S. presidents continues with the birthplace of the 23rd president in the next episode.